Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Every Calorie Counts podcast. Today we have a special guest. We have IFBB Pro Aaron Clark on. Hi, Aaron. How are you?
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So I reached out to Aaron to have him on because I thought he's got a pretty a pretty good story, right? I mean, we're going all the way back to you got your pro card back in 2012, I think, right?
Yeah, that was the year.
Yeah. Marino, what grade were you in 2012?
I was just going to say, I was literally like 11 or 12. So
Yeah, exactly.
probably, what is that, like 10th grade?
I don't fucking know. 11 or 12 is perfect. All right. So she was,
I didn't even know
yeah,
what a gym was. I was still doing gymnastics.
yeah. I think I was like a year away from having my first kid in 2012. So that's how there you go. That puts it in perspective. But the bottom line is you turned pro at USA's, which is probably, if not the most prestigious place to turn pro, especially in bodybuilding. It's one or two probably between that and nationals. And I think if I remember correctly, you prepped yourself into USA's. Am I right on that?
Yeah, well, yeah, you want me to just give you a little
Yeah,
background?
sure. Yeah, let's go right into it, dude. We'll just continue to break
You
it
know,
down.
I s- so when I was a teenager, I started weight training. Junior in high school, I was really skinny and had a lot of like body dysmorphia, eating disorders, kind of like, and lifting weights and bodybuilding, not on stage, but just as like a lifestyle, was kind of my way of kind of keeping myself together. And some people were like, oh man, you should compete. You should compete. And I remember at that time, I looked at it and I was like, man, that is so weird. Like, I had no interest in ever doing it.
Yeah.
And then I think, when I was a year or two went by and I was looking at the people who did teenage nationals and I thought like, I could beat those guys. So I did teen nationals. And I didn't, so I got second place there because I didn't have any tan on.
You didn't have any, so you had no idea what you were getting yourself into.
No idea. No one was helping me. My dad came to the show, but bless his heart, like he was just doing it because he loved me. He doesn't know. Like he had no idea.
Yeah, right. Right.
It's way out of his wheelhouse. And so yeah, I got a tan from a tanning salon, like a spray tan, because I thought, oh, well, I'm going to take care of this ahead of time. I'm going to get sprayed professionally. So I got a spray tan. And they're like, don't worry, it gets darker. And I was like, I sure hope so. Because I looked, just barely. And I went up there and I remember Dave Palumbo came up to me and he's like, what the hell is wrong with you? He's like, you would have won the whole show. And I was like, just, distraught, like,
Right.
I tried to get a tan there from the guy. And the guy said, no, I won't tan you. I don't know if I have enough spray tan, even though I tried to pay him. And then did that well, they put me in second place still. And the guy who I tried to buy the tan from, he came up to me and he said, bro, he's like, I had no idea you looked that good or else I would have tanned you earlier. And I was like,
what a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, I didn't compete again until I tore my pec a little bit after that. And then, yeah, when I did that, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I starved down to like 130 pounds or something. And then everyone saw me and were like, what the hell happened to you? And I got really depressed. And I was like, I know there's something inside me that's like, you have unfinished business here, like you have to go back. And when I was 22, I was like, fuck it. Let's give it another shot. I'll see what happens. Right. And I entered a show in Maryland. Trying to think of what it was called, but it was the Maryland State East Coast Classic. That's what it was called. And I won the heavyweights in the overall, just, boom. And everyone was like, man, you belong on the national stage. Like, you look so good, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, really? And I was like taking classes at a community college and like, I didn't have any money, and everybody tells me like, well, you got to do junior USA's and then you got to do junior nationals and then you got to do this, you got to face and then I was like, man, I don't have money for all that. So I was like, I'm just gonna do USA's and then see what happens. And I did USA's the next year and I won.
Damn.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was 203 pounds as a heavyweight. Because I remember
At that, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but at that time, did you recognize like how big USA's was? Like, was it something where you were like, did you fully grasp? So, do you feel like that helped you a little bit going into it? Because I feel like I'd be shitting my pants, knowing what it is. Do you feel like it helped you a little bit, not really kind of putting that in perspective?
how do you mean not putting it in perspective?
Like without you understanding like USA's is this big ass prestigious show, and like if I win this, like I'm automatically kind of like people are going to be looking at me at the very least, right? I feel like that's the difference. Like you get your pro card at USA's, you get your pro card at nationals. I feel like there's a certain expectation of that individual rather than if they are winning, a smaller national level show at this point and they're getting their pro card. Like we might not look at them the same as somebody that wins USA's. Like that person, we're probably expecting the next year, 2 years, potentially they're on stage, doing well in a pro lineup. Right. So again, in my mind, if I'm going into USA's, I'm automatically more nervous than if I went into Universe or if I went into another national level show. Again, the prestige of USA's is so big. So not really understanding that, maybe that works to your benefit going in there. You know what I mean?
Well, I did understand it.
Oh, you
at
did.
that-
Okay. Okay.
And I
Okay.
think that people talk to me and they were like, you can do it. Will
Right.
they award you for it? Like, we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Because of the
And
politics. Yeah. I got you.
it's really weird because when I look back, it was kind of something that's like, most people say, well, you can't do that. Right?
Right.
You can't just come out of nowhere and win that, especially like the smallest guy in the class. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But like, there was something inside of me that knew that I would win. I don't know why. And it sounds weird, but like there was some, like, I feel like I told myself I wasn't going to win, but there was something inside of me that was like, you're going to go do this and you're going to win that show. And the thing is, when I won, I was the youngest pro in the world for a few months until Dallas McCarver came and won his pro card.
Shit. Okay.
And, in winning, it was like, wow, I just did this incredible thing. Like my life's going to change. And nothing happened,
Yeah.
zero. No one gave a shit. I went home broke and I was like, damn, it was the most anticlimactic moment of my life. And it's a really surreal experience when you achieve something that is like impossible or some really goal. And then it's like, there's nothing here.
Nothing. Yeah.
Right. And
and that,
I got on a path that was going to lead other places, but in and of itself, like it was just a monumental, just soul crushing, like,
right.
I remember trying to get a contract and no one was, people were like, if you were better looking or a little taller, or they would say shit like that, just kind of, I was like, damn,
Right.
But,
shit that you have no control over. Yeah.
yeah. So then I did New York Pro the next year, just out of my own
So now,
pocket.
real quick, I'm curious. When you at first reports, where were you living at the time? Like, where are you from originally?
Northern Virginia. So
where about in Northern Virginia? Because I remember one of the videos I saw from you were Woodbridge, Virginia, which is where I'm actually from that area myself.
Fairfax.
I was born in Fairfax, Virginia. I'm like the only person on the face of the earth that's born in Fairfax, Virginia. There you go.
Yep. So my parents still live there. I still go down there, during the holidays and stuff. Yeah.
Parents live in Fairfax still, or I still have family like the Potomac Mills area, like around there.
Yeah, my parents still live in Fairfax. Yeah.
Nice. So that's actually pretty cool. You're literally the only other person I think I've ever met
Really?
from Fairfax. It's not, like outside of Fairfax anywhere else.
Yeah.
What's that?
I mean, there's a lot of people there.
No, I know. I'm saying outside of Fairfax. Like if I'm outside of Virginia, I should say. Yeah, because I'm in Jersey now. We moved to Jersey years ago, and like being in Jersey, I rarely meet anybody from Virginia, let alone anybody from Fairfax, Virginia. I was born in Dumfries, specifically. So like if I
Right.
tell people I was born in Dumfries, people are like, where the fuck is that in Virginia? You know what I mean? It's like nobody has any
Yeah,
no
yeah.
clue.
I know
But
Greece.
not nonetheless, so you're from Virginia. You obviously spent a shit ton of money. They go into USA's. USA's is not a hop, skip, and a jump away. Like that's a plane, that's a full hotel. There's like, there's a lot of expenses that go into that. Now, did you prep yourself into USA's?
Yeah, I mean, I knew somebody who was like in a Facebook group who like gave me some pointers, but like I was on
Okay,
my own. And I think at
gotcha.
that time I would see these bodybuilders and their coaches, and I would see the bodybuilder do this thing, and then the coach would be like, I won, and I would be like, man, that's like I'm gonna win, and
Right, right.
I didn't want to do that. I was really hard-headed, and I was like, I don't like maybe later on, but like I want to win,
Right.
I don't want somebody else to be like, look at my racehorse here that like,
Yeah,
and I
yeah, I got it.
understand the dynamic now as I help people do that, but like it's just at the time I think I was really turned off to it, and I just was like, I have to do this myself. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which is, I mean, that in and of itself is kind of like another layer. Like, again, for me, like just mentally, I don't know if I'd be able to handle it, but especially into a show like USA's. But now, so 2015, you're going right into, or no, it's 2014, you said, right? So a couple years later.
2013, I did the New York Pro.
So are you working with a coach at this point?
So when I when I won USA's, I felt like I was like the hot girl at the bar. Like all these coaches came up to me and they're like, "Bro, you're gonna work. It was gonna be so great." Like I remember, oh God, what's his name? George Farah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Fakhri Mubarak, and I ended up linking with Fakhri Mubarak, and you know, it worked out well. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't a good client, but I was also good enough of a bodybuilder that everybody was kind of winning from that situation.
Yeah.
So like, I would just kind of go rogue all the time. And I think that,
Really.
yeah, and back then, like I look back, I'm like, man, that's shitty that I would do that, but I was winning,
Yeah.
and like when I came back, just to fast forward to like 2020, and I worked with, you had him on the show, Johnny,
Johnny. Yeah.
because I knew Johnny from way back when,
Right.
and that I followed everything to a T.
Okay.
I think that I had this sort of like, I was like overly confident in myself because I had won USA's by myself. I'd done it all
Right.
myself, But yeah, so I was working with Fakhri a little bit, and who's a great guy. He helped me out a lot, so hats off to Fakhri.
And again, at that time too, for people that don't know, because I mean, Fak is still around, but he's obviously he kind of, went in a different direction there for a while with a supplement company and did a whole bunch of different shit. So, but at that time, he was really one of, if not the biggest coach in the industry at that time. I guess there's always Chris Aceto and whatnot at the top, but as far as a coach, even honestly, and he might hate that I say this, but like on that Instagram level, on that like social media level, he was the guy that was really blowing up and almost kind of at the forefront of coaching at the time.
Yeah, yeah. But so I did New York Pro, and I wasn't sure if I was going to do 212 or open. Ended up, it was like, no, you should do 212. They asked like the judges, and they're like, you should do 212. And I came down quite a bit in weight. I was peeled at that show. I mean, super peeled. And I got fourth place, and I was so pissed. I remember, and everyone's like, no, that's so good for your first time, which is just like, you want to punch people when they say that. You're like, I don't care if it's your first time.
Right.
But I remember Jose Raymond showed up like on like the night before, just like, I'm gonna do the show, and he won. And I want to say it was Sami Al Haddad was in second, and then Mark Dugdale was there, who had been a pro forever,
Yeah.
fantastic poser. and he placed in third. And I remember being real salty about that, like,
Yeah.
like I was more shredded,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's bodybuilding, and the older I get, the more it's like, you signed up for bodybuilding, man. That's just how it goes. Like,
Right.
it is what it is. So I got fourth there, and Steve Bleckman, MD, he like, oh, you're gonna be fantastic, all that. And he was like, I'm gonna give you a contract. And I was like, oh, my big break. And it was not. It was not. I mean,
It's not, no.
when they sent me how much it was, I was like, is this for real? It was like a little allowance,
Right.
And so that happened. I had to call him an MD. And then, I mean, you remember Gear Nutra?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I remember that video standing out the most, just because, again, I think when I saw it, I remember there being something about Woodbridge, Virginia. I think that's really why it stood out to me, and why I kind of remember it. I also remember it specifically because there was a video there of you making breakfast. You're making eggs and chicken sausage, if you remember. And specifically because of that video, I went out to buy chicken sausage. I fucking hate chicken sausage, and I wasted money on fucking chicken sausages from thereafter. I fucking hated it. I couldn't stand it. I bought it because this guy on the internet told me to. So, but yeah, Gear Nutrition. Was that the first sponsorship?
Yeah. And yeah. Do you know what happened?
Vaguely. I mean, I remember the guy that did, I think was it like a Ponzi scheme where he took a whole bunch of people's money and to basically start Gear Nutra, and then it was like, it didn't make any money or some shit like that. I remember there being something shady going on.
It was like the Titanic. He just had this big fucking thing and just drove it right into an iceberg. Like,
Yeah.
it was just gone, just like that. I mean,
Mhm.
because he would just ball out. Like, we
Yeah, I
would
remember
go,
there was a lot of athletes on there. He had a ton of people at
oh
first.
yeah, Juan Morel.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, I can't remember. The only person I remember is you and Juan Morel, but I remember there being a lot of like, it was the
A lot
flashy
of
brand for like a
big
hot
names.
second.
And he would just, he would just get the whole nine, like, at all the events. And we
Yeah.
would go to a photo shoot, and we'd go to a steakhouse and go to the club and get a table, just be like, just spending.
Reckless. Yeah.
And it was cool at the time. And then
Well, I'm sure for you too, that was probably a decent contract, right?
it was all right, like, I mean, it doesn't matter now. The company doesn't even exist anymore. I think they were just paying me like $2,000 a month or something.
Okay.
It wasn't like crazy,
Yeah, it
but
wasn't like a whatever. Yeah, I mean,
you know,
for sure.
and it was going well. Because at the beginning of that year, I got an invite to the Arnold, and I did the Arnold. I got third. I placed behind Flex Lewis and David Henry, and that was huge for me.
I think even more impressive too for people that don't know, it's who you placed in front of. It was like you just talked about. Jose Raymond came in 2 weeks prior to a New York Pro and won. And again, he was one of the guys at that time. Obviously, there was Flex Lewis, like you just mentioned, but at that time, it was really like we were still kind of like evolving, I think, as the 212 from that 202 category. And it was something that was kind of like people were still kind of like solidifying their places. And obviously, Flex Lewis took over at the top. But the guys that came immediately thereafter, like the Jose Raymonds and so on and so forth, that kind of built that category, they were kind of cementing themselves at that time. And you were placed ahead of some of those guys at that Arnold Classic. So we're not talking about, even the New York Pro that you went on that year to win, which was, again, that's another one of these things where we've talked about it recently because it just happened. But like that, even that show was so much greater in terms of the prestige that it had then than it does now. It's kind of, you talked about this with your whiteboard chat recently, but with the amount of shows that are around now, we kind of see like that just diluted effect. And, a show like New York Pro, even though it lives on in name, it doesn't necessarily have the same level of, excitement attached to it. And the victories there don't mean as much as they used to. That was a big show to win back then still. So, yeah, and there was a lot. So you went on to win that one. But again, it's the people that you placed in front of that I think is even more important to note there. So it was a lot of names. When you go back and you look at that category back then, we had a lot of good competitors there, specifically in that show, but in general in the 212 at that time. everybody that what you would consider to be like a Hall of Famer of the 212 division specifically was around at that time.
Yeah, Hida Talga, Yamagishi.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I forget the whole lineup, but there was a lot of good guys. And so that was a great experience. And then New York Pro was, I'm trying to think of the timeline. It was like 10 weeks later, something like that. And they were like, you're going to win the New York Pro. And I was like, okay, like really putting it on me like that. And I think that was probably the most pressure I'd ever felt, because people were assuming I was going to win.
Right.
At least people around me, and, but, it ended up working out. And so, but right about a month or two after that New York Pro, it was stuff like my checks stopped showing up, or I had a big
Nutra company.
Yeah, or they bounced.
Right.
And then my bank went crazy, and like every time I put a check in, it wouldn't let me have it for like a week, because it was making it clear. And by the time the Olympia came around, I mean, they were underwater. I mean, and he was still trying to convince me like, oh, I hope that you stay. And I was like, man, this is crazy. Like, and a lot that year was really crazy for me, because it started at such a high, like we're talking about, just like I was at the peak, like one of the best in the world, and everything was going great. And then on the way to the Olympia, my girl of 5 years, who I had a ring for, was like out, and looking back, like it was a very unstable environment, like there's parts of it I definitely understand. But, at that time, I mean, I was just crushed, right? And my check stopped showing up. And I mean, I was hanging in by a thread by the time I got to the Olympia. And I was just like, Aaron, you've got to keep it together. This is like the biggest moment of your life right now. Like, you can't let all this shit get in your head. Like, just down and do this. And so yeah, I did that show. I got 6th there.
Right.
And I'll always wonder, because, and not saying the other guys couldn't have placed ahead of me, they absolutely could have. But after prejudging, I was like in the first call out, and I should have been based on, like in 4th.
Right.
And then in the finals, they were like 6th place. And I mean, it just felt like a knife to the stomach. I was like,
really?
Yeah. And, I'll always wonder, like, because Gear Nutra was on the board of sponsors, and they didn't pay their
shit
money, and I don't know.
Right.
Obviously, I'll never. But I was there like, I'm in 4th. I'm going to get 3rd place, if I die doing it, like, just like, and then I got announced in 6th place. And yeah, I mean, I was devastated, because obviously my entire personal life was destroyed at that point. And so it was like the one thing I was counting on. And the check for 6th place was like $2,000, something like, like you spent enough to get there.
Right.
Yeah. And then went home. Obviously.
Well, wait, I got a couple questions for you real quick on that season. So now, is anybody, first and foremost, I'm curious, and I'm going to ask a couple questions, you can answer one, but I'm curious, what was bigger for you, the first pro win at the New York Pro, or taking 3rd place? Because listening to you now, especially with the 6th place finish at the Olympia being a knife through your heart, essentially, right? It's like you clearly, like to me, it's like you clearly, it's victory or nothing is what it seems like. So like, if it's, I think most people, especially nowadays, if it's your 2nd pro season and you're walking in to most people can't even fucking get on a stage 2 years after they win their pro card. They need a solid 2 years to grow before they can even like want to take a second call out at the Charlotte Pro somewhere. And you know what I mean? And like, here you are, your 2nd year, and you're literally taking 3rd place amongst Hall of Fame bodybuilders, right? At an Arnold Classic, you're winning a New York Pro, and then you're taking top 10 in the world in the 212, and you're saying it was a knife through the heart. So I'm curious, which one of those wins was bigger for you? And then after that, is there anybody that's in your ear, right, at that post Olympia and saying, dude, that was a fucking crazy like second year for you. Like you should be like through the roof with this. Like this is your starting point here, not your ceiling. You know what I mean?
Right. And, hindsight is much
Of course.
different than in the moment, right? And so like
Yeah.
looking back, I certainly recognize all that. But
Okay.
I think when you've been like boom, 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 right up to the top, you kind of expect that from yourself.
Gotcha.
And I think also just the reality that my personal life was just like,
Yeah.
and I was like, I need this so bad,
Right.
And so that, I think that's really it. And yeah, after I got sixth at the Olympia, everyone at the show was like, man, that's so good for your first time. And I didn't want to hear it,
Mm.
I mean, a poor loser, I guess, like I didn't have a great attitude about it, but I think if I'm going to like give myself grace for that, it's just like, it's the whole picture of what my life was like at the time. And that I was just had put so much pressure on myself to like make it happen.
Well,
You know?
you're young. You're young. All you know is winning at that point within bodybuilding. I mean, honestly, at that point, what was like the worst spot you ever took was like third place finish at an Arnold Classic. You know what I mean? So all you
Right.
do was winning.
Jaded. You're jaded and you're like,
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
And you also didn't have the coach client relationship that a lot of guys have nowadays, where they have kind of that almost like a mentor in some cases, or like somebody that is there really telling them. Because again, when it comes to the coach client relationship, it's also it's on the coach to some extent too. You know what I mean? Like it's on the coach, it's on the client, and there's got to be that combination of minds there, really like talking it out and understanding. Like, dude, this is an amazing season so far. This is our floor that we're setting. The ceiling is yet to come. You know what I mean? Like you could have had that, but obviously, like you said, you're almost like a rogue like client and kind of like in your own head and wanting it for yourself. Go ahead.
Well, Fakri did do that for me. I mean, he was very
Okay.
encouraged, absolutely.
Okay.
He helped me get to the Olympia actually, because Gear
Right.
Neutral like owed me thousands of dollars, and he helped me get my flight and get there. And he was very
Nice.
helpful. But at the same time, I think he and I expected more from that,
Right. Yeah.
show.
So it's just kind of a letdown feeling with all the
Yeah, it's a
shit
letdown
going into
feeling.
it.
Obviously, it's fantastic to get sixth at the Olympia. It's crazy, but it's just like I said, it's just and that timeline, like the perspective at that time, not necessarily like when you zoom out and you look at the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, from a personal life perspective, because I really want to make sure that we kind of touch on both at the same time so that we can make like a good points out of this whole thing going forward and people can kind of learn from this and take away from it. What are you doing outside of bodybuilding for like essentially making a living? Obviously, you already touched on your relationship and how that was kind of deteriorating a little bit at the time. And I'm sure that was probably because of how much effort and everything that was going into the bodybuilding. But was there anything outside of that Gear Nutri contract or the muscular development contract or anything like that was going on that you were doing for money at the time?
So I think that's when I look back at that time. And at that time, I felt almost like sorry for myself for all these things happened to me, right? But because I was so heavily relying on it, I put myself in a position where I was easily shot down,
Mhm.
And I think it has a lot to do with I hadn't really set my life up yet, and the success in bodybuilding was just like boom, like so fast. And so, yeah, my life wasn't set up. I was just flying by the seat of my pants. And, I would train some people and stuff like that's a whole other conversation, but it wasn't significant. So I was very heavily relying on that. And I really regret that I lived like that, but I would never do it like that again,
All right, so now we got to the point where we are. So you didn't set yourself up well, and you were flying by the seat of your pants, and it was one of
Yeah.
those things where you basically got, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it almost feels like you got caught within the whirlwind of the success there, and it was almost like like you said, I think sometimes I would be allured by the idea of, well, this is the path now. Like I'm doing so well, I'm at the biggest point. Like when is it gonna explode for me and be that massive thing where I am getting the $100,000 contract from Muscle Tech?
Right. And people were in my ear telling me that too. So it
Yeah,
wasn't
of
just,
course.
it was just my whole world, right? Was that.
Right.
But then after that, so I went home, landlord kicked me out, and I was in my parents' basement, broke, and just being like, what the fuck happened? Because like it all just gone.
Quick.
And yeah, I was so depressed. And I tried to, I was like talking to companies looking for something. And no one really offered me anything great. They're all really low ball offers. And Blackstone Labs offered me, a moderate contract, but also a job if I moved to Florida. So I took it because I didn't really have a. Go ahead.
This was going into 2015.
Yes.
Okay.
So I moved to South Florida. And yeah, I think that I don't know if that was a good decision or not, because I was really just kind of rattled. And my response was just like, take off, So I did that, and I ended up doing the Arnold the following year. And I got fourth there. I didn't look quite as good as the year before, I think. But, obviously I got fourth at the Arnold, like it's pretty good, right? And then after that is when things really went downhill. I had like some drama with ex-girlfriend, and then just, I was living alone. And so I mean, I'll some background on it. So when I was living in South Florida, working at the warehouse there, they would have all these like research chems come through.
So you were at Blackstone, you were in the warehouse. I thought, wasn't it a sales job that you had at the time?
Yeah. I was a sales manager.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, I do remember that. So you were a sales manager, and then you said you were in
Don't tell me
the
he's
you said they were having research chems come in.
Yeah, well, I mean, long story short, there was this stuff, and when I was like having these panic attacks and stuff, we were like, oh, this stuff is great, like just try some of this. I remember the quote was, it's like painkillers with none of the bad side effects. And I was like, and of course it worked fantastic, right? And so I started taking this stuff, and then like a few weeks in, I realized that I am just like horribly addicted to it. Like I have to redose every 2 hours.
Was it kratom?
Tianeptine sodium was this stuff. They still sell it online, I think. But the thing is, it was at one time a prescription drug, and it was sold in these little, I think it was like 12.5 milligram tablets. But we had tubs of it, of powder.
Right.
And when you take more, like a couple grams of it, it becomes an opioid. Right. So I was, it was like I was addicted to oxycodone or something, and it had a really short half-life, like an hour and a half. So I'd have to take it with me everywhere. And if I didn't have it, I'd just start pouring sweat and like, yeah.
That's crazy.
And I was like, shit, like, because now I've got this sales job, and I am going to compete. And I'm like, well, I can't stop, because if I try to quit, I'm going to be just toast for a month at least. So that's when I said, oh, I'm going to do the San Antonio Pro. And people were like, you sure, man? Like, you're not doing too good. I was like, I can do it. And so I did this crash diet for like 2.5 weeks. And then I went there and I weighed in the night before, and I was like 221 the night before. And I remember the guy with me who worked there, Trevor. He was like, Aaron, he's like, we can just chill, man. Like, just don't worry about it. And I was like, like, no, like I came here to do the show. And so I took a wildly irresponsible amount of diuretics, and I woke up the next morning, and usually that backfires, but I looked good. I was like, damn, that worked. And I was 211.
Son of a bitch.
And I got second place. And again,
was
I
it the diazide? Was it diazide or was it Lasix?
I took probably, 5 or 6 of them, like something stupid.
Jesus.
Something that I would never do now. And it's something really stupid. I'm very fortunate.
I can't believe you were as full as you were. I remember, like I said, the only thing I can really remember from that show, and I think, and we talked about the guy who won already, but I vaguely remember him wearing like yellow or orange trunks, the guy that won. Like I can almost, I'd say you won't even, but like I remember you being full enough to where it was like, oh man, should he have won? Like I remember it wasn't a clear cut. Like if you would have won that, I don't think anybody would have argued with it.
No, yeah. So I did that
but
show,
the fact that you
and
took
then
6 fucking diazides the night before, that's insane. How the fuck did you remember? Like, did you do anything to like? Were you chugging water with those, or did you completely totally shut it off?
I didn't completely shut it off, but I just remembered, peeing like a horse all night, and like waking up, and I looked so different, and I couldn't believe that.
Fascinated by this, I really am.
Oh, it's awful. But obviously at this time I'm wildly irresponsible with like in all kinds of ways. And so yeah, did the show, got second. Again, I was like really disappointed about second, which is a joke. Like the fact that I got second doing that is crazy.
Yeah, insane.
And then I'm like, well, I'm qualified for the Olympia. I'm going to do the Olympia. And everybody's like, don't do the Olympia. Like, dude, just get your shit together, But I wouldn't listen. And I went and did the Olympia, and that's where I just shit the bed. Like, I remember somebody told me that to use Lasix. And the thing with the Olympia is the weigh-in is like Wednesday. And the show is until Friday or Saturday. So I don't remember exactly that year, but it's like 2 or 3 days. So I took all this Lasix to get my weight down. And then like sometime the next day, I probably looked good. And then just
rebounded.
You can't come back from it.
Yeah.
And I think I was like 13th place, something bad,
Was anybody helping you at that time where it was kind of like, oh, fuck, like, let's like damage control, eat this, do that? No.
Okay. I was totally rogue at that point. Just like, I think if anybody had been helping me, they would have told me to not do the show,
Right.
And
so now are you still pounding the drug at this point? The research chem?
So I'm just a wreck. And I told the guys at Blackstone, I was like, I'm going to do the Olympia, and then I'm going to fly home and check into an outpatient rehab center. And so after I did the Olympia, I flew to Fairfax, and I like detoxed off of this stuff. It was terrible. But that's a long whole other can of worms because they put me on Suboxone and Klonopin.
Oh
And
shit.
then, yeah, I mean, I didn't quit using benzodiazepines until 2019.
Oh, god damn it.
Yeah. I mean, they fucked me up.
Yeah.
Which is obviously my own fault, but um yeah.
Oh,
So I
no.
mean that whole period from the end of 2015 until because I competed again in 2018 and I just made an absolute clown of myself.
That was when you did the open?
Yeah.
That was 2018. Okay. All right. All right. See, I
Yeah.
remember timeline wise, I'm all fucked up. I thought that was like 16, 17. So you were off. So you were going through an essentially a recovery period that wasn't really a recovery period from a personal perspective, from a drug perspective.
Well, it started out as a recovery period and
Right.
then I I got huge. I was over 250. Um but I don't really know why. I mean, there was just this time that I don't know, I just wanted to be just obliterated all the time. And yeah, it took man. Um just thinking of how to talk about the timeline.
Well, were
When
you,
I
let me ask, were you
competed in
still,
2000, what? Go ahead.
go ahead. Well, I was going to say, what, as you're coming, as you're going through this process, obviously you went through detox, right? You're trying to get yourself right. But obviously, again, with the introduction of now the benzos being in there, are you essentially, I don't know what the fuck we're gonna call, are we taking the benzos on a regular basis and still with the mindset of I'm gonna be a bodybuilder, I'm gonna go to open and I'm gonna, I'm pushing the food, I'm pushing the training. So my question, how the fuck did you, like, it's hard to push that much food to begin with. You're doing it, taking the benzos on top, which can obviously impact things like, fucking appetite at the very least. It's going to impact your
Oh,
ability to go in there and train hard.
so I'll just stop you right there. Benzos, if anything, you can eat way more when you take them.
Really? See, for me, it's the opposite effect. And when I have a benzo, because I have enough experience here too, when I have a benzo, it's the exact opposite. I feel like there's a group of people where they take a benzo, they're up, like they go, and like you're saying, you have the appetite, you could probably go to I'm the exact opposite. When I take a benzo within fucking 20 minutes, dude, I'm drooling. I have no appetite. Like I'm seriously, I'm gonna
That's what's
fucking pass
supposed to
out.
happen to you.
Right,
Yeah,
right, right.
but if you're an addict, it's different. But um, yeah, I mean, so it was all kind of like compartmentalized. And then I had a thing where the doctor was giving to me. I called for a refill and he had just dropped dead.
Shit.
And no one would give me a refill. And so I just started buying them off the internet.
Mhm.
And then that just went, like out of control because I had as much as I wanted.
Mhm.
And then with just certain other life situations, relationships and stuff, like, whenever I felt like I was like, I'd just take more and take more, and in 2018 when I competed, it was really a wake-up call for me because everybody was like, what happened to this guy? He's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, damn, really? Like I was that delusional at the time, as most people are when they're, heavy on
Of
narcotics and
course.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't have a problem. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I remember when I did the New York Pro, a guy came up to me. I think he recently passed away, and he laid hands on me and prayed for me, and then escorted me out. And I was like, what the fuck? Like I was like really mad about it. But
Yeah.
like looking back, I'm like, man, like you're a clown, Aaron. Like what do like it's sad. And I
Yeah.
remember the internet having a field day on me. And
Oh yeah.
even the people, my group of friends in the Fairfax, and looking at a thread and watching them all just throw me under the bus. All the people I
Mhm.
thought were like my best friends. They were lying too. They would make up more stuff and they just all these lies about me and just like and I had a lot of problems, but I was a nice friend. I
Yeah.
wasn't
Right.
screwing people over to do anything. And I was just like, damn, like like they don't really give a shit about me, you know? Like I think they just wanted to be my friend because I was the pro guy, you know, doing so great.
Yeah.
And so
Well, at
after
this
that, I
time, let
moved.
me ask. Well, let me
Go
ask
ahead.
real quick. What are we doing for work? Because obviously, there's that big piece of time there that you were with. Were you still with Blackstone, or you had left Blackstone at that point to do the detail? What were you doing for work in terms of life in general?
So Blackstone had me on a bigger contract.
Okay.
I didn't work for them anymore, but I had a fatter contract check.
Okay.
And that really allowed me to like go off the deep end,
Gotcha.
which is obviously why, you know, but when you don't
Right.
have to show up anywhere
Yeah.
and you already
Yeah.
have a problem, like it's just
Well,
bad.
and you can say it's a problem too, but like when you start to think about this, like it all makes sense. And this is why I was so interested because, like, at the end of the day, you're a young guy, you get into this position where like the sky's the limit, you're riding this high the entire time. And it's almost
Yeah.
like you never had nobody taught you how to set a schedule for yourself on a day-to-day basis. Nobody taught you how to be accountable to like these deadlines and this, that. Like I also lived in this industry, completely and totally different story. No, like not what the one thing that I would say is the only benefit that I got early on in this industry, even though it was a long, winding road, right? The bottom
Yeah.
line is, at least I had that. I had a background of like I had to wake up, I had to go to work every day. You know what I mean? Like I had to work
Yeah.
in an industry that held me accountable, and I had to learn some of these base principles of like, dude, you got to show up to work. Like you have to clock in. Like you have to get shit done. Even though I was probably bringing home fucking less money than you were on this contract, the bottom line was I still had to be held accountable to that shit. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like you didn't even have that really to base like any type like a good basis of reference.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't a child, you know, I should have figured that out. But yeah, I mean, like it's it's a toxic way to live, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I would never want to do that again. Just have a check show up, you know?
of course.
You got to
Right.
have somewhere, something to do, somewhere to be. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Well, you say like you should you're an adult and you should figure it out. But like I said, that was again, I worked in a field where like my job eventually became hiring, training, and development, and I had all young 20-year-old guys underneath me, and it's like I honestly I don't think that is something that you learn by yourself. I really think that that's something that you have to be
well,
put
I
into a
did
system.
learn eventually. Took the hard
Eventually, yeah,
road,
but
but
you had to take the hard road. Exactly. So now
yeah,
it's 2018. You try to go open. Obviously, all of this stuff is kind of materializing. What starts
yeah,
to happen at that point as far as the benzo addiction? And then obviously your career as far as bodybuilding is concerned. And then again, I kind of want to continue to tie in the personal life too, because again, I think there's a point to be had here from all this.
yeah. So at that point, I was with my now ex-wife,
Mhm.
and after I just made an ass of myself, um, we moved to Panama City Beach and started a painting business. Very random.
Mhm.
And I kind of at that point I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna bodybuild again because that was experience
Right,
was just so terrible, you know.
right.
Um, and so you know that goes on. We were there for a little bit. Then we moved to Raleigh in 2019,
I think I remember
and
this. This is when you were training at the Crunch.
yeah, I still train clients out of there.
Oh,
Um,
sweet. Okay.
so and that's when I finally got off all the other stuff, like everything.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
I had been doing better, obviously, than before, but it takes a long time. I mean, that shit is,
That's what I was going to ask. Again, this is something that's close to me personally. So it's I know
yeah.
benzos are not only are benzos hard to detox from, but they're also one of the most dangerous. I didn't know this until
Oh, it's
I've been put
terrible.
through a situation there where like people die more frequently coming off of benzos than they do some of the other really harder drugs that people would be more like inclined or considerate of as far as the withdrawal process from that. But benzos have a really rough withdrawal process.
Yeah, it's the worst. I mean, I've been through opioid withdrawal and all the other stuff. Like, uh, there because I would run out sometimes
Mhm.
of them, and I wasn't taking them like, yeah, I take two at night to bring me down. I was always on them, like
Right.
round the clock. So when
Mhm.
I would run out, my body would just go into this, like I would get stiffened up, and like I'd be pissing this dark color, and like I would be terrified. Like,
Yeah.
because I mean the reality is like I could die,
Right. Yeah.
And so yeah, it was awful. And it's really scary because when you quit them, it feels like your brain is broken, and it feels like you're going to have to be put in a home.
Yeah.
Like it's so overwhelming to just like go take a shower, or like just like do things, because just the noise, and like you've just been blocking it all out for years. And look people in the eye when you talk to them, things like that, is like, it takes so long because you have to relearn how to like live with anxiety, and everybody needs anxiety. Like it's a necessity of living as a functional human being,
Right.
And so yeah, I mean that's it was a long process that even when it was over, it wasn't really over. Like I think it just takes time.
Mhm.
So that 2019, in 2020, so I got married at the end of 2019. And when COVID hit, I was just, I didn't have anything to do. And I was like, well, maybe I should do a show. I had keys to a gym to work out and nothing to do. And I was like, I need to come back and just kind of, if for nobody else, just for me, to like prove to myself that the last person, that's not who I am,
Right. Right.
like I need to at least like end this chapter the right way.
Now, let me ask though, did you sustain training and everything all through this? Like you at no
Yeah,
point during like the painting business,
yeah,
because I remember there was also another company that you worked with at this time too, right? It was Dynamic something or other, or maybe it
yeah.
was
I
something
still
else.
work. I still work with them.
Oh, do
Yeah,
you? Okay.
yeah,
All right. So you're training and everything during this whole time.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I know. I know. I mean, yeah, yeah.
And,
Um,
and you're maintaining your size. Like you're not just training, you're actually like you're basically living the lifestyle of a bodybuilder along with
oh
all this
yeah,
other
and
shit.
that's the messed up part about it, is it's like, I was big, I was strong, you know, but I was a
Yeah.
wreck.
No, yeah, nobody's looking
Um,
at you thinking, yeah.
well, they knew that they looked at me for long enough, they would think, yeah.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
but so yeah, I did the show in 2020. I worked with Castellana, and that was good. I mean,
Yeah.
great
That was the
experience.
Tampa, right?
Yeah, I got fourth.
Right.
George Peterson won.
Okay.
Um, but that was good. I mean, like, and I did what I set out to do,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of people who are really encouraging, like, it's so good to see you back and like
Of course.
looking okay.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was important. I needed to do that, for myself at least.
Right.
And then the end of that year, things with the marriage just totally just go south all of a sudden, and
Mm.
um, get divorced the next year. In the midst of the divorce, I'm like, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna do a show, and so I do a show. Did Tampa again. I got top 10, but I wasn't really my best because I think I was just kind of scrambling.
Mhm.
I
Did
had
you
my
work with
legs
Johnny again for
breaking.
this one?
Yeah, yeah, I did.
Okay.
But my body, like, it wouldn't get rid of this water in my legs. I was having this edema in my legs too, like this blowing up my ankles. And I was terrified. I was like, it's not a good
Mhm.
sign.
Right.
And I think after that, I was like, I need to reevaluate like what I'm chasing here, competing. Like,
Mhm.
because, a lot of people who are my age, they're still chasing a pro card. or they're
Right.
chasing. And so when I stop and I'm like, well, what if you made yourself go on dialysis, Aaron? Like, what are you chasing? You know, like, so you got that thing. Like, are you going to do better than that? Are you just competing just because you think you should? And so I had all these kind of this internal dialogue with myself, and I still don't know the answers to those questions.
Mhm.
But anyways, so divorced, and then yeah, man, ever since then, I guess just kind of been living in North Carolina, and for a while it was just personal training, like full time. I mean, like 70 some sessions a week. And just recently, last year, I made a website, and I've been putting more effort into my content, as you can see, and just
Yep.
trying to
Yep.
kind of like put myself out, because I have this online presence that I don't maximize, I
Use.
don't
Yeah.
use,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
And so that's more so been my goal as of late. Because everybody, like,
Capitalize.
that's what this is about nowadays, really,
Mhm.
I mean,
Yep.
but yeah, I don't know. I mean,
So
ask
now,
whatever questions you want.
well, let me ask you, in 2020, when you come back,
Yeah.
are you elated to get the kind of response that you got from people? Like, is it something where you're actually happy, or because of the previous experience in 2018, are you kind of taking it with a grain of salt because you kind of like, you're watching people kind of go back and forth almost a little bit, even if it's not the same person that's talking shit in 2018 that's congratulating you in 2020, how fast it can kind of flop on its head now. So are you really happy as far as like the external concept, or did you really do it for yourself? And like you're like now you don't have that kind of idea of what you were last on stage, and you kind of repositioned yourself, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. I think that, I mean, no matter what anybody says, everybody cares a little bit about the external, right? Like, well, I don't care what anyone else
Right.
thinks. Like,
Exactly.
it's bullshit. Like, you do care a little bit, right? So of
Mhm.
course I cared about the general perception of like the energy I was putting out into the world, right? Like, who do people think Aaron is as a human being, right? Because last time I, you know, kind of destroyed what I had created before, right?
Right. Right.
So yeah, that was important to kind of come back and be like, hey, like, you know, that's not how things are, whatever. But I think it was really, for me, was I elated? I think that again, we go back to that I expect just this out of
Bill.
myself. And so to
Okay.
compete, like, I got fourth, but like if I had placed out of the top five, I would have been just brokenhearted. Right.
Mm,
And I know that's silly because I would tell that to anybody else.
yeah.
But I also think that just internally, like, I've been kind of ruined by like placing so well, you know? That's how I know bodybuilding. And
Right.
that's why I continue to bodybuild, is because I
Mhm.
liked winning, you know? It
Mhm.
wasn't necessarily even that I enjoyed the stage or
Right.
competing, but winning is very fulfilling, right? And
Mhm.
like realizing like, damn, like I'm really good at this, right?
Right.
Like I should do it more, right? Like, and so that's why I continued. So I think when um, I didn't, like, let's say it hadn't gone well, right? Yeah, it would have been hard for me to accept that. Yeah.
Mm.
And I
So,
reckon it's not a healthy way of looking at it, but it is what it
yeah,
is.
that's what I was just gonna
Yeah.
ask. Like, how much do you think bodybuilding, like for you, I really wonder, and again, maybe you can kind of elaborate on this, but like, was bodybuilding, you think, an inherently negative thing for you over the course of this stretch of time? Or was it the constant positive for you? Because it seems like the one thing that you kind of like maintained during all this, shit that you went through, right? It was the one thing that was there.
Yeah.
It was the one thing that you kind of pulled you back a little bit, right? But at the
Yeah.
same time, it also feels like it is the route that kind of pushed you here. Like, who knows if it was like, hey, I never competed in bodybuilding and I did go to school to, and I was a cartoonist for this, and this, and I took this totally other trajectory in life. Would have that been maybe a healthier place for Aaron? We'll never know. So again, I'm curious, like, how do you think, how do you view bodybuilding? Do you view it inherently positively, or do you view it inherently negatively as it relates to all these things that kind of not happened? Because I don't want to paint a picture where you feel like it happened because of, right? But it's like, you were in this walk of life because of bodybuilding.
Well, both, very much so,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And I think that any negativity that came from bodybuilding, there's also a very strong voice in the back of my head that I wouldn't be here still if it wasn't for bodybuilding.
Gotcha.
Like, I started bodybuilding because I was going to kill myself, because I couldn't live with my body or accept myself. And so, like, I wouldn't have probably made it to my mid 20s or early 20s, and like, I was very troubled, and I had a really, really toxic view of myself, and just like, trying to think of how to say it, but that was my way of kind of like keeping myself online, right?
Yeah.
Was bodybuilding. And it was almost like something that I was like, I have to do this to stay alive. And I think that's why dieting and coming in really shredded was like not that hard for me, especially early on, because it was like, I, I wasn't used to treating myself well, right? Like, there was kind
Right.
of like
I get it. Yeah.
you know, and so, I did whatever I had to do to make it happen, whatever, right? And there wasn't any fear involved, or like, oh no, like my health, like, I was just whatever, it's right. We're just going to get it done.
Right.
And obviously, the older you get, like, your perspective changes on that. You kind of realize. I think I look at all that pretty. Trying to think of like, I certainly recognize that
Yeah.
about
Like, you're getting
why
closer now.
did I
How old are
become
you?
a body, and why. And I honestly, I'm incredibly fortunate, because the thing that I needed just happened to be something that I was good at.
Right.
It just worked out that way,
Right.
And if that hadn't been the case, I don't know, right? Um, and I think that it missed all of the ups and downs, and kind of like the, getting lost in the woods here and there. Like, bodybuilding did keep me at least like close to the road,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
on it, but at
Exactly.
least like a little bit.
Yeah. It was your
Uh,
North Star. You got lost a little bit, but it was your North Star.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think when I talk to other people, I make sure they know all the negative things about bodybuilding,
This is where I
because
wanted to go with this.
I know who I was getting into bodybuilding, and
Mhm.
I can tell other people don't have that demon in them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so, like, they might not need to do that. Like, maybe they want to do a show just to prove it to themselves, but they're not doing it because it's the only way they're going to live another 5 years, Like,
Right.
and I think that that's what I want other people to know. And that's what I make
Mhm.
sure I say to others, because bodybuilding is, and as cool as it is, and as much as I owe to bodybuilding, and I am a bodybuilder, I mean, it's pretty negative, you know.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's pretty
Inherently. Yeah.
unhealthy in a lot of ways, and it really fucks people up. And
Mhm.
you know, I'm not saying people shouldn't do it, but you should be very aware of what you're doing, and you should be aware of why do you want to do it,
Mhm.
like, why. And when people say, well, I want to compete, I'm like, why? Like, why are you doing this? And some people just want to see if they can do it. Okay, go see if you can do it, you know? But the body image and eating disorder stuff is like, that shit weighs heavy on me, not only because of my own, but the sister who is just below me, she just died in March at 32
Sorry.
Oh my God.
from
Right.
eating disorders.
Oh shit.
So I
Okay.
watched that happen my whole life. And so when I
Gotcha.
see people get into this, especially girls too, they're doing this, and I
Mhm.
watch the whole process, it kills me,
Mhm.
because it's
Yeah.
like I see it and I know, like, this is a disorder,
Mhm.
and like
Yeah.
we are playing with fire. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but you should be very conscious of that,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
you're
And
on
that
the edge of a cliff.
we talk about it all the time as far as, and you see it a lot with the younger ones, especially nowadays too, because as much as it's not bodybuilding per se, the whole fitness concept, right? Like the Instagram concept, like it's very much people identify this way, right? Like they pick this up and they identify as a bodybuilder, they identify as this fitness person, as this person that has to yield a certain standard so they can take pictures of themselves and whatever. And it becomes very like all encompassing. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
part of this whole conversation was supposed to be ultimately about like how you felt about, getting into something at a very early age, on such a trajectory that we already talked about, and how you kind of like, maybe even became, I don't want to say a victim of it because that's not the word I'm trying to use here, but you became, such a part of that process that maybe it didn't allow you to develop yourself in so many different other ways. And, like you talked about recently on a whiteboard chat where it's like, what's going to change when you become an IFBB pro? Like some of these people hold on to this to such a strong extent, right? They make
yeah,
their whole life about this. They got to get the pro card, road to pro, or whatever the fuck it is. They got to get the pro card. They
yeah,
got to get the pro card. Then you turn around and you're 28 years old and you're still chasing this pro card, and your entire life's been about, posting on Instagram, pro card, going from job to job, never really solidifying your life in any way, shape, or form, just trying to make it through and get to that
yeah,
next show or show season or whatever. And now
yeah,
again, you're close to 30 years old and you've wasted this entire life that somebody else was, potentially in college, going, getting a degree, or maybe even forget about college in the traditional route, but maybe they were starting their own business and doing something, immense with themselves where they're now 30 years old and they have a family, a life, a real foundation to kind of live from. It's like we see this all the time in this industry. I really do. And it's just one of those ones where it's like it's interesting to get somebody's point of view that had that peak on one side, but then you also had the struggles on the other side in terms of the personal life.
yeah. No, for sure. I mean, absolutely. I mean,
Do you mind if I ask how
it's
old you are now?
35.
Sorry, I cut you off again. I keep cutting you off. Okay. Yeah. Cause I wonder too sometimes, like, it's like for me, I know for me personally, I feel like when I look back, I really feel like I didn't start to mature mentally. Right. And it has nothing to do with bodybuilding or whatever, just me as a person for whatever fucking reason until I was easily into my 30s. And you're talking about
Yeah,
a guy, I have a 17-year-old child. Right. So like I started having my first kid was when I was 21 years old. You know what I mean? Like I had all the responsibility. I had multiple kids, but again, I still didn't fully, and I'll be honest with you, I really feel like I might not have fully taken the next step in life until I was your age. Until I was 35 years old. And it's like, that's when things started to really come together for me in terms of a process where now I'm 39 and I can kind of look back and it's like, I feel like I've only had any type of like modicum of success or like I've been able to put one foot in front of the other, continue with some sort of momentum and progress in a way of life since I was like 34, 35 years old. And again, a lot of
yeah,
that goes back to my personal life and the relationships that I was in and all that bullshit. But I think a lot of it was also the lifestyle that I felt like I had to live 24/7. And I was never a big competitor. I'm not a good competitor by any stretch of it. I fucking sucked. I was a horrible bodybuilder. I'm fucking tiny and I'm fucking 5'9". But I also had bad body image issues. And I held
yeah,
on to, competing and bodybuilding as this thing that was in my mind a necessity. Right. Like I had to do it. Like there was no question of
yeah,
whether I was going to go to the gym or not today. There was no question of whether I was going to take gear or not this week. There was no question of whether I was going to eat all my food. It was just like inherently part of the process. And I
right,
felt like that was something that I had to do to feel good about myself. when the entire time it was also taking away from this area of life. It was taking away from this area of life. I wasn't the best dad that I could be. I wasn't the best employee that I could be. I wasn't the best business, and it's like, it wasn't until I matured as an individual mentally that allowed me to put emphasis on the right areas of my life. And now if I don't make it to the gym, I don't make it to the gym because I have better shit to be doing. Like, I have other shit that I have to prioritize in life. Right. So, but
I
it took me a while to mature.
I like that this is going in this direction because I know, Tim, you and I spoke about this a few days ago. Like, okay, I'm like only 24, whatever, but I do feel like recently here, my mindset like around bodybuilding and where I'm at in my process has really, really shifted where, yes, I want to finish what I started. I want to turn pro. I want to, close that book, get to where I want to get to. Just because when I set my mind to something, I need to get it done, I'll get it done. But I've gotten to a point now, like mentally, where I don't know if it's because my frontal lobe has developed, but like I don't care so much about the sport of bodybuilding the way I used to when I was a teeny prepubescent little 18-year-old girl just getting into this. And it's crazy for me to think about myself back then and how much I valued or had such a tight grip on the sport when I was so far away from getting there. And now that I'm already getting closer, it's almost like I care less because I'm like realizing how much more these other things matter. I don't want to be a single 30-year-old. I don't want to get to a point where I'm putting all of my eggs into the bodybuilding basket. I get this pro card and just like you post it, nothing happens. Like nothing's going to happen, so it's like, I don't want to put so much weight on the sport anymore. And in a way, I feel like it's actually helped me be a better athlete because when you let go of it, I mean, personally for me, I've noticed that I do everything a lot more chill. Like, yeah, I'm still going to train, I still take PEDs, like I'm still going to eat my food. Like, it's just the mindset around it is so much lighter and chiller now that I don't care as much. It's just very weird because then when I think about it, again, starting at the age of 18, 19, like how did I do that? It's so weird. It's so weird.
Well, you had the same exact path as him. Your first show was an overall. Your second show was an
Second show was
overall.
an
You know what I mean?
overall.
Like, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like you guys had so much success early on that it's almost like, but again, regardless of it's like the success almost worked against you guys in a sense, not
Yeah.
entirely, but in a sense. Yeah.
It makes you
But
kind of
it's just,
jaded, or it gives you a different perspective, right?
yeah, it makes it
And I
that much
think,
more important.
And then like I had to be humbled. I had to be humbled a few times for me to be like, oh wait, like I'm not that good.
yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that, that's happened to me, but there's also in my head, it's like, well, you already did all this.
Mhm.
So what are you going to do now? Are you going to do better than that? Like, probably not. So what are you doing?
Yeah.
And that's hard to answer. Like,
What's
unless you
the next
just,
step?
right. Like, if you want to just keep doing this until you have to tap out, or are you going to bow out early, well, you're still in one piece, and that's the question I have to ask myself. I have to go in a couple of minutes here. Just
Yeah,
FYI.
for sure, for sure.
Um,
Yeah, and
but
we'll wrap it up. I think it's the interesting thing for you is that you are 35 now, and I wonder how easy it continues to get for you to look back and look at all the things that did happen positively for your career, and look at all the
Mhm.
things that, like, like I said, the Arnold Classic finishes. Like, there's, how it is, dude. Out of the tens of thousands of people that are going to get a pro card over the next 5 years, there's literally, it's 0.1% of them that are ever going to reach the heights of the sport that you did. And I know you obviously have a very like high expectation of yourself, but again, at some point, I would like to think that you're able to sit back and be okay, not just okay, but like fucking happy with what you were actually able to accomplish in the sport,
yeah, of course. I mean, I'm very thankful and grateful for that, And like I
Mhm.
said earlier, I'm very thankful and grateful that the thing that was like that I needed, right? It was like my lifeboat, or so to say, right? That
Yeah,
it just happened to work out that I also was able to do really well in, because I don't
yeah.
think that's very common, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
True.
I'm the exact opposite. It was my lifeboat too. Only I sucked dick at bodybuilding. I was awful at it. So,
But
all right.
to your point of like, investing in the other things and things that got kind of like strangled by the weeds of like bodybuilding and stuff, like you were talking about the whiteboard stuff, or like my more creative side, that was really who I was before.
Yeah.
And I just kind of let it die. And I think, you know, after I got divorced and spending more time by myself and thinking, like, you kind of you become more aware of that, and you're like, man, that's not okay, you know? And realizing that, you know, you're
Yeah.
still proud of these other things, but like, well, I can do much more than that, right? Like, you know, so whatever that
Right.
might be, whoever it is, right? But it's like these other tendencies or gifts or whatever that you want to call them, you know, that you may have, or even hobbies. And that's why I tell people, like, bodybuilding should never be your only hobby. Like, have a couple.
Yep.
Because like you said about sometimes when you loosen your grip and you have some other things going on, like you'll see like your training will flourish because you're just choking it before, you know, it's
Yeah.
like you're unhappy. Like even if you're like some kind of fucked up feeling of fulfilled from it, like you're not thriving, right? And
You're right.
it's so
Yeah.
important.
Totally.
It's funny, like I'll post that and people are like, oh, that's some bullshit. You got to go all in or else, you know what? I'm like, yeah. Well, you are all in, but at least it doesn't, just because you know, play a musical instrument or you do this or that, doesn't mean you can't be just as good of a bodybuilder,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Probably be better and you'll be
Yeah. They
happy.
haven't matured yet.
So that's what I, you know, hope that people understand, because it's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So before we wrap it up, where can people find you at this point, especially if they want to work with you or they want to hear more about your story, etc.?
Instagram is probably where I'm at the most. So just Aaron Clark, IFBB Pro.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'll link it down below as well. Thank you so much, Aaron, for sharing your
Thank
story.
you guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm literally 5,
Absolutely.
so I only know you as per your recent posts and like your humor and stuff. So I did not know any of this, and I definitely
Well, now you know an awful lot.
now I
Okay.
know it all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll catch you guys next week.